I didn't have a week to come up with this question. I really want to know.
Yes, you don't have to tap dance for him, man. The show was done.
You just picked food out of his beard.
Yeah, no, I told him.
Are you kidding me?
Man to look good on camera. I got this. I want my man to look
My
good.
man. Do you hear yourself?
So Marc Lamont is officially firing back at Queen's Flip after Flip accused him of tap dancing for Joe Budden. And if you've been paying attention, this isn't coming out of nowhere. The latest exchange between Marc Lamont and Flip Flares has them clashing once again. And honestly, these two have been locked in a tense back and forth ever since that explosive moment last year that turned into one of the wildest situations in podcasting. Now, for anyone who might have missed it, Marc Lamont recently found himself getting dragged all across Twitter and various message boards. A clip started circulating again where he said he would prefer a Trump presidency over a Hillary presidency, framing it as a choice between shaking up the system versus continuing what he viewed as the same left-wing political status quo in America. And once that clip resurfaced, the internet did exactly what it does best, turned the heat all the way up.
Powerful. Right, but again, so that plays into the idea that anybody but Trump. And what I'm saying is that I would rather have Trump be president for 4 years and build a real left-wing movement that can get us what we deserve as a people than to let Hillary be president and we stay locked in the same space.
I would rather not have Donald Trump be president.
I don't know about Trump, man.
So it seems like Flip saw that clip making the rounds and decided to flip it back on Marc Lamont by bringing it up on the show. But just like I expected, and honestly like a lot of people expected, the way Flip framed the question completely missed the original point of what Marc was saying in that clip. And the moment Flip started steering the conversation in a direction that felt off, Marc Lamont wasted no time jumping on it. You could hear it in his tone when he said something like, "Oh, you had a whole week to set this up," basically calling out how calculated the question felt. And then Flip fired back with, "Oh, you tap dancing for Joe," which is a wild choice of words to use in that moment. What's ironic is that if you actually watch the podcast regularly, it's always felt like Flip is the one who's eager to stay in Joe Budden's good graces. Now, maybe that's because they've known each other for a long time, not necessarily as close friends, but through history. Let's not forget, Joe Budden was once signed to Flip's people under what's been described as a pretty bad deal. That connection has always been there. But once things escalated, Marc really turned up the heat on Queen's Flip, basically saying, "Look at you, you're the one fixing Joe's beard when there's food stuck in it. You're the one always trying to stay on his good side." What really happened in that moment was Marc holding a mirror up to Flip and throwing the accusation right back at him. And then, in the middle of that exchange, Imani jumped in with some commentary. I don't think Imani was necessarily siding with Marc, but whatever he said clearly rubbed Flip the wrong way, because you could see the irritation start to build.
We said, I don't got to bet that from him like you because he makes funny jokes.
I'm about to ask you a question. How you get to me?
And Flip immediately snapped back like, "Yo, you really taking up for this guy right now? Come on, stop." Now, I know on the surface, Flip might have looked a little wild in that moment, but honestly, I get where he was coming from. When you're in a back and forth with Marc Lamont, you don't want extra voices jumping in. Marc is really good at building rapport with everybody else in the room, which makes people feel comfortable enough to joke, add commentary, and pile on, especially when Marc has his sights locked on you. I've seen this same thing play out on Spaces. Marc has a lot of supporters. And let's be real, he's got a lot of glazers. I'm not even going to lie about that. And a lot of times, it's the intellectual crowd, or at least people who want to be seen as intellectual. Now, I'm not saying Marc's entire fan base isn't actually smart, because that wouldn't be true. But like Imani once pointed out, there are definitely some people who are, respectfully, dumb as rocks. Not all of them, but some. Those folks latch on to Marc's talking points because it makes them feel like they're the smart segment of the Joe Budden audience, even though in reality they couldn't really argue the points themselves or execute the logic the same way. They just want to align with who they think is right or who they believe sounds the smartest in the room. So Flip was basically like, "Why are you riding with this dude right now? This is corny." And then Imani shot back, "What are you talking about? Don't even come at me like that. Why are you aiming that energy at me?" That back and forth alone made the moment even more interesting. And then Marc leaned into what people already assume about Flip, that he's not that bright, that he doesn't really know what he's talking about. When Marc said, "You had a whole week to ask this question, and this is what you came up with," that was a calculated jab. And to make it even slicker, he followed it up with that passive-aggressive move. "You ready? Come on, you ready?" Yeah, that's when you knew it was personal. Now that kind of line is something you'd say to someone you think is slow on the uptake, and that's exactly the vibe Marc was going for with how he framed that question, kind of positioning Flip as if he wasn't getting it. But later, Marc clarified what he actually meant. He explained that he doesn't think Republicans and Democrats are wildly different or anything like that. Instead, he pointed out it's wrong to act like they're polar opposites, because both sides still operate within the same hierarchical power structure in America. He made the point that both parties can be warmongers, and gave examples like how Bill Clinton allowed corporations to grow into huge conglomerates through media outlets and push the crime bill, moves that a Trump supporter might criticize as well. So really, Marc was just trying to highlight that it's more complicated than just red and blue. That was his reflection at the core of the clip. Moving forward, it's clear that Marc-Lamont-Hill and Flip just really don't like each other. There's no real friendship there. It's kind of similar to the dynamic Melissa Ford and Flip had. They started out cool, faking it a little even, doing skits together, but eventually stopped because of a fallout. And later, it was obvious Melissa couldn't even stand to have Flip around. Not just his look, but just his energy and presence in the room. Remember when Marc and Flip did that one skit together? Yeah, just one. What a wild time that was. It's a solid reminder that when you're creating content with people you don't genuinely vibe with, things can get messy. I remember when they invited me to join Improper Improv, and I was like, why would I do content with people I don't like? Because later you could pull up those clips and use them against you, showing you how you were chasing clout or a moment. So seriously, be careful when you make content with folks you don't truly get along with. It can come back to bite you. Before I wrap this up, I want to quickly point out another moment involving Marc-Lamont-Hill. It's less of a full-on exchange and more of a heads up. So Ice made some kind of insinuation or joke, implying that another cast member might be gay or homosexual, and Marc didn't hold back, putting Ice on the blast for that. I won't dive deep into it now, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Wait.
No, I'm just trying to figure out.
See, this is how you be walking yourself down the wrong way.
How?
Now, right there, you hear Marc calling out Ice, saying something like, yo, why is it that you jump into the jokes on everyone else's expense, but the second someone jokes back at you, it's like you're protected by vipers or something, and everyone's got to stand back? That's a solid point, and it's one of those criticisms a lot of us, including myself, have thrown at Ice for a while now. Ice often gets labeled as this chill, good guy type who supposedly stays above the drama when it comes to throwing shade at other cast members. But honestly, that couldn't be further from the truth. He jumps in just like any other fan or regular viewer would. He rides the waves, dissing people here and there, just like the rest of us. Now that kind of call out from Marc has to be a bit unnerving for Ice. I think it's like a subtle warning, either, hey, I'm coming for you soon too, or don't cross me, or I'm going to start targeting you. Only time will tell how this tension will unfold. One thing I'm curious about is if they ever dive into Ice's relationship during all this. I feel like that's a topic people want to roast hard. I'm not claiming to have any concrete info, but looking at past exchanges, it's clear Smart Joe and the crew had been itching to bring it up, and don't think that's flying under my radar. A few times when Joe has shot shots at me, it's been right after I've talked about Ice or them. When Ice gets targeted, the flags go up fast. He's got serious protection on the show. Nobody else gets that kind of shield. You can throw shade at Marc or Imani or Ish or Joe or Parks, and it's all fair game. But when it comes to Ice, oh no, you might get an email from the QABs. For those who know, that's the Caber Squad, the folks who make sure Ice gets defended hardcore. All right, that's my breakdown for now. Let me know what you think about the ongoing back and forth between Marc and Flip. Also, tell me your thoughts on the Ice and Marc dynamic, the subtle warning Marc dropped, like, hey, Ice, don't act like you can go there because things can escalate real quick. Honestly, I'm not sure how Ice will handle being on the receiving end of that heat. Flip might be able to roll with it a bit better. I don't know if Flip can really take it all, though. I think Flip's playing a low-key game, trying to catch Marc off guard. Flip's kind of like the guy who sacrifices himself to land a hit on the target. He might get a big hit on Marc eventually, but it'll come with a price to his reputation. And honestly, I don't know if Marc's ready for that either. Both guys are playing a game, whether on the pod or just in public. They're watching each other, sizing each other up, feeling out the tension. At one point, Flip even threw a jab saying, oh, you begged to stay. That right there sums up some of the vibes going on.
Hey, look, he got to join in because he begged to stay. Go ahead, let's get it going.
Flip's "oh, you begged to stay" line, that's some serious shade right there. He's basically calling out Marc like he's desperate to stick around, to stay relevant, or keep his spot in the conversation. It's a way of saying you're clinging on too hard, or you're trying too much just to be part of this. It's like Flip is trying to expose some insecurity or hunger in Marc's game, suggesting Marc is more about survival than real power. What do you think Flip's really getting at? Drop your take in the comments.